and welcome back to another B.Hooked crochet video tutorial. I'm your host Brittany, and today this is going to be a special crochet along, and I'm going to show you how to do the retro granny square pillow. And if you follow me on Facebook, you'll have known that this was a candidate for the February crochet along, and it actually didn't get voted, but there were so many people who really wanted to learn how to do this pillow that I wanted to go ahead and do this special edition so that it is the crochet along for March. As you can see here, I've got 4 colors standing by to use. Now you can use any combination of colors. You can use however many colors, how few, you could just do 1 color if you like. This is a color scheme for my studio, and so I'm actually making this pillow to go in the chair that sits at my sewing machine cabinet. So I'm using these 4, and you can probably find some pictures of my studio available online. And you can see that I've got my curtain done in this same color as well. I recommend for this tutorial that you use a worsted weight yarn, at least if you're following along with me. Now you can use a smaller weight or a chunky weight, but this specific tutorial is going to show you how to work with a worsted weight. And as you can see, I have a collection of different yarns. I'm using Soft Secret, Caron, and a brand called Primo. And they all have a very similar texture and a similar size. So as long as you have that, you don't have to use the exact same brand, but I do recommend it. For this tutorial, in addition to your yarn, you're going to need I'm using a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, and that's what coordinates with my yarn. If you're using a bulkier worsted weight like Red Heart Super Saver or Red Heart with Love, you might want to bump up to a 6, but just go ahead and use your judgment on that. And in addition, you're going to need a darning needle and some scissors, and you're going to need a 12-inch pillow. Now I am actually purchasing my pillow from Hobby Lobby, and they're relatively inexpensive. You can cover an existing pillow that you have as well. Just keep in mind that this pattern is going to have a little bit of laciness to it, so you're going to see the pillow through the work. And so the pillow that I have purchased has just a white cover on it, so I would recommend you either use a pillow that coordinates with the colors of your yarn, or you just make a simple white cover, or you buy a cover that's just white in itself. Another thing you want to keep in mind when coordinating your colors for this pattern is know that the reason I call it a retro granny square is because we're not going to be connecting them in the traditional way. So the color that you start out with at the beginning is going to show up on basically the middle of all sides. It's going to be the middle top, the 2 sides of the pillow, and on the bottom. And whatever you have towards the outside is actually going to appear kind of as an X in the middle. So I've chosen to do the blue first, and honestly I am winging this color combination as I go. My curtain doesn't have a specific pattern, like I didn't choose 2 rows of blue, 2 rows of gray, 2 rows of white. I kind of just mixed it up as I went along. So I'm going to do the same thing with the pillow. Essentially all the retro granny square pillow consists of is 4 oversized granny squares. If you're working with a 12-inch pillow, that should equal out to be about 9 rounds for the gauge that we're using. And if you're working with a 16-inch pillow, which is also common size, then it'll be about 12 rounds. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how to crochet the granny square. We're going to start off by creating a slip knot. To do so, just wrap your yarn around your finger twice towards you, pull the back strand over the front, hold on to that, and then pull the front loop up and over your finger. Now insert your hook into that loop and tighten it up. Okay, and we're going to start off by chaining 3. So yarn over and pull the loop through the hook. That's 1 chain. That's 2 and 3. And now we're working in rounds, so we need to basically attach this to the other side so we can form a ring. So to do that, what we need to do is insert our hook into the first chain that we created. And we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop and then just kind of pull down on your work there. And we're slip stitching this together, so just pull that second loop through the first one on your hook. And from here, you need to go ahead and try to open up this ring as best you can. And it's a little bit difficult because we only have 3, but just basically pull on each side. And what I like to do is just try to work one of my fingers right into the center, and that's how I get an idea of where the center is. So this loop is a little small to get my finger to fit in there, but I have a general idea of where it needs to go. And so from here, what we want to do is chain up 3, and then we want to double crochet into the center. Now this chaining of 3 is counting as 1 double crochet. So you want to yarn over, insert your hook into the center of your ring, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Now that counts as 2 double crochets. Now we want to have sets of 3. So we're going to yarn over and insert your hook into the loop, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And there we've essentially made one little group out of 4. And so from here we need to create a corner. And the way we're going to do that is simply chain 2. And then we are going to continue on double crocheting. We're going to do another set of 3 into the center of the loop. So just like before, double crochet. We're going to do this 3 times. That's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and now we need to make another corner. And we're going to do that the same way as before. We're just going to chain 2. And then we're going to continue double crocheting into the center of the ring. And now you'll notice, if you're watching me as I'm crocheting, I like to work over this tail end so I don't have to weave it in later. And the way I do that is I kind of hold on to it between my ring finger and my pinky and just kind of hold it alongside the chain that I'm working around. So that way I can just work right over top of it. So as I said, double crochet 3 times. Okay, and we need another corner. And you're probably thinking, this doesn't really look like much, but I promise once we get to the end of this round, it'll start making sense. So we want to double crochet 3 more times. Okay, now we've almost reached the other side. The only thing that we're missing is the other corner. So we need to chain 2, and then we want to join with our chaining of 3. So if I kind of pull this up a little bit, you can see my 3 chains from before. Let's see, actually I've got 1 chain here, 2, and this is 3. And so I'm going to insert my hook into that third one, just put it straight through, yarn over, and I'm slip stitching. So I'm pulling that through. Okay, and now you can kind of see, if you kind of block this a little bit, you've got your square is forming. Okay, so you've got these little holes are like your points. Okay, and so that is the end of round 1. For round number 2, we're going to start off by chaining 3, and that's going to count as a double crochet. And essentially we want to increase every round so that this gets bigger and bigger. And so the way we do that is basically we're going to add some extra stitches into these corner pieces. And so since we've got one double crochet, well, we've got our 3 chains, which counts as a double crochet. We want to double crochet one more time into the gap space. Okay, so just kind of bring your hook around, put it into that space, and then double crochet. And then what we want to do is double crochet one more time into the center. Okay, and that is going to be one group, and we're going to jump across and we are going to double crochet 3 more times into this other corner. Okay, and we need to create another corner, so we're going to chain 2, and then we want to put 3 more double crochets into that same space. Okay, and then we just need to jump onto the other side, the other corner here, and we're going to put 3 double crochets. So with granny stitches and granny squares, you always work in double crochet sets of 3. So that's 2 and 3. And now we need to create a corner by chaining 2. And we're going to double crochet 3 more times into that same space. And jump across to the other corner. And put 3 double crochets. And chain 2 to create another corner, and double crochet 3 more times. Jumping across to the last corner. Now we've already got our second set in this corner, so we just need to put 3 more. And then we have to finish off again by chaining 2 to create the corner foundation. And just like before, we want to slip stitch into the 3rd chain. So I've got first chain here, second chain, 3rd chain. So I'm just going to insert my hook right into there and yarn over and slip stitch through. And with that, that's the end of round number 2. And as you can see, it's looking a lot more like a square, and it'll get more square as you go along. Okay, we've just finished up round number 2, and I'm going to go ahead and start crocheting round number 3 in the same color, and then I'm going to show you how to do a color change. So just like the end of round number 1, we are going to chain up 3, and we want to put 2 more double crochets into this corner gap space. For a total of 3, because that chaining of 3 is going to count as 1. And now what we do with granny squares is we work these sets of 3, and we do it in between the other sets of 3. So basically we're going to move into this space here. We don't have to chain or anything like that. We're just going to go ahead and double crochet 3 times. And then we're going to move over to the corner, and we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to put 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 more double crochets. and that's forming the corner for round 3. And we're going to do that exact same thing all the way around. So I've got 3, I'm going to chain 2, and then double crochet 3 more times. Okay, just like before, I'm going to jump over this group here, and I'm going to double crochet 3 times into that gap space. And that's our repeat. I'm going to jump over to this other corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2, three more double crochets, okay, so go ahead and finish, we're halfway there now, so go ahead and finish with the rest of round 3, and then we'll pick back up from there. Okay, I've come back around and I'm working on my last corner. Just like before, I just need to put 3 more double crochets in a chain 2 to finish off this corner. And then from here you want to slip stitch to the 3rd chain. So you can see I've got 1 chain, 2, and 3. Insert your hook into that 3rd chain and slip stitch. Okay, that finishes off round 3. I'm going to go ahead and bind off because I'm going to change colors. So if you're also going to change colors as well, all you're going to do is just trim off your yarn and then pull that strand through. And I am going to use gray next. Okay, to add your new color, you're just going to take it and you're going to make a slip knot just like we did at the very beginning. And then we're going to start working in the same corner that we ended up on last time. So go ahead and just put your hook right into the corner space there and put the new color on your hook through the slip knot, and then just pull it through, and then you want to fasten it on, so just chain 1 to do so. And then we're going to pick back up just like before, we'll just pretend like this color change never happened. So we're going to chain up 2 more times. That's going to count as a double crochet, and we are going to double crochet 2 more times. I'm just holding these tail ends behind the work to try to keep it out of my way. Okay, and I'll weave those in later. Typically I would crochet over top of the tail end so I wouldn't have to weave them in later, but the problem with this is you've got this open area and you would see it pretty clear there if I were to just weave them in. So from here we just jump on over into this very first gap space that we've got, and we're going to double crochet 3 times. And by now you're probably getting the hang of it. We are going to crochet the same way every single round. The only difference is it's going to be getting slightly bigger every round, but every time we're going to put 3 double crochets into the gap spaces along the sides, and then for the corners we'll do 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 more double crochets. And we're just going to continue along until our piece measures the length of our pillow. made it to my first corner. So I've chained 3, a double crochet 3, chaining 2, and then I'm double crocheting 3 more times into the same spot. And why don't you go ahead and finish up this round, and we'll meet back up when you're done. Okay, I've made it all the way around, and the last thing I need to do is chain 2, and I'm going to slip stitch into my 3rd chain, and I'm going to do this color one more round, so I'll have a total of 5 rounds here when I'm done. So by now you're probably getting the hang of it. At the beginning of every round, you're just going to chain 3, and you're going to put 2 more double crochets into the corner, and then you're going to do 3 double crochets into each of those gap spaces. And this is literally all that we're going to do for the entire time. So go ahead and finish off round 5, okay, in whatever color you choose, and I will meet back up, and I'm going to change colors again after I finish off this round. Okay, I've finished up round 5, and as I said before, I'm going to do another color change, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this yarn and bind off, and now I'm going to go to white next. So just like before, I'll show you one more time. You're just going to create a slip knot, and then you're going to insert your hook into, I do it in the same corner that I bind it off from. So go ahead and stick the new color on your yarn and pull it on through, and then you're going to chain 1 to secure it, and then you're just going to continue with 2 more chains. That's going to count as your first double crochet, and just double crochet 2 more times. Pretty simple, huh? That's what's really cool about this pillow. It looks like it's pretty difficult, and looks like it's an advanced pattern, but really it's quite simple. So just like before, I don't think you need to watch me do this entire round, because as I said, it's exactly the same as all the other rounds. So you're just going to put 3 double crochets into each of your little gap spaces here. You're going to work the corners the same way. I'm going to use white for just this one round, and then I'm going to go back to my very last color, which is coral. So I'm going to finish this round, and we'll meet back up when I'm ready to join on my new color. Alright, I finished up with this round of white, and as I said before, I'm going to bind off and use my last color. So same as before, just going to trim that off, pull that tail through my loop, and I'm going to bind on this coral color. So again, just create your slip knot and insert your hook underneath that chain 2 gap space, and then put the new yarn on your hook and pull it through and chain 3 and continue on. So we are going to add 2 more double crochets to start off this round, and then I'm going to turn it, and I'm just going to continue on just like before. So I'm probably going to work this color for 2 rows or 2 more rounds, and then I'm going to measure it off and see where we are from a size standpoint. Okay, I've just finished up with row number 8, and now, like I said before, I'm going to go ahead and do a measuring check. And what you want to do, whatever size pillow you have, if you have a 12-inch or 16-inch, you want to measure from corner to corner. Now, my square is getting a little bigger to fit into the entire frame of the camera, but basically I'm just going to measure from one corner to the other, and right now it measures about 10 inches, and so I need to make mine about 2 inches bigger I'm going to make this a 12-inch pillow. So I'm going to go ahead and probably add on about 3 more rounds, and then I'll do another measuring check. So you continue on and do the same. Measure and decide how much you need, and I'll meet back up when my square measures from corner to corner 12 inches. Okay, I finished off my first square. It measures almost exactly 12 inches from corner to corner, and I have it folded here to show you what it's going to look like once you start assembling your pillow. You're basically going to have 4 squares that look exactly alike, and so when you put all 4 of these together, you can kind of get a sense of what the pattern is going to look like by folding them in half and looking at them just like I've got it laid out here. So what you want to do is go ahead and make 3 more squares exactly the same as you made these. Okay, you could probably do a different pattern, but I'm not real sure how that would look in the long run. If you do decide to try that, please share some pictures because I would love to see how it looks. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and crochet 3 more squares exactly the same size and in the same pattern. And when I return, I'll show you the assembly. Okay, as you can see, I've finished all 4 of my granny squares, and all of mine look exactly alike. And I've put them together just like this so you can get an idea of what the pattern is going to look like when it's finished. We're going to be using the slip stitch method to sew our granny squares together. And one of the things that we need to do is basically get these so that the right side is facing up. So I'm just going to unfold all of my squares. And now that'll give me a starting point. So basically we know that at each end right here is going to be the corner of our pillow. So I'm going to go ahead and start there. I'm going to start at one corner down here, and I'm going to work my way all the way up, and then I'm going to jump back over to this corner and work my way all the way up that side. We're going to be using the same size hook that we used to crochet the square, and I'm also going to be using the same color that I ended with. So I ended with blue here, so I'm going to use blue so that way my slip stitches match and they're the same color. So what we want to do to start off is go ahead and create your slip knot. And this is just how we would do any normal color join. And grab your hook, and what you want to do is start off in the corner. And you want to insert your hook into the corner of one, and then insert your hook into the corner of the other. And if it's a little bit easier for you, you can fold these pieces together so that they are basically wrong sides facing towards each other. Go ahead and put your slip knot on your hook and tighten it up. And then you want to pull that loop through, and you want to chain 1. That's going to secure your yarn onto the corner of your material. And now if you flip your work upwards, you can see all of the little V's, or all of the little stitches, and basically what we need to do is slip stitch into every single one of those. So flipping mine up, you can see my next 2 stitches are right here, and you want to make sure you do the stitches that correspond to each other. Okay, otherwise your squares will be sewn together a little bit crooked. And so basically all I did was just insert my hook under, I got the first V there, insert it in. Now I've got 2 V's, so I've got 2 stitches, and I'm going to yarn over and pull the yarn through, and then I'm going to pull that same strand through the strand that was already on my hook. And that's a slip stitch, and that's basically all we are going to do throughout the rest of this project. We're just going to slip stitch our squares together. Now when you come to a little gap like I've done here, so I've got my first 3 and now I've got a gap, and what you want to do is just go under that whole entire space. Okay, you don't necessarily have to go into the chains. You can, but you don't have to. So I'm just going to go under both of those stitches and yarn over and just slip stitch it. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that you kind of want to try to make these stitches a little bit loose. Okay, that's one of the problems with slip stitching. It has a tendency of getting really, really tight. And if the tension of your slip stitches here doesn't match the tension throughout the rest of your project, your seams are going to look really tight, and it's probably going to make your pillow be a little bit bunchy at those points, okay? So that's something you want to keep in mind. So go ahead and move along throughout the rest of this granny square, and go ahead and pause your video, and when you reach the end of the square, we'll come back and I'll show you how to fasten on the next granny square. Okay, I've made it all the way to the end of my granny square, and the last stitch that I need to make is just one slip stitch into the last chain, the corner chain. Okay, and then I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to grab my other two, and I'm going to treat these exactly the way I treated the rest of my squares. Okay, I'm just going to put these together, and right now I have them wrong sides together, so they're just facing, you know, just sitting right on top of each other. And I'm going to find the two corners, and I'm just going to line them up with the rest of my work. Okay, just kind of put your working yarn aside. And now all you're going to do is find the chain 2 corners. I'm just going to stick my finger in them so I know where they are, and just insert your hook into both of those. Okay, make sure your working yarn is tight coming from the other side of your project, because if not, you're going to have kind of like a little bit of a gap in a string that's just kind of hanging over. So once you know that it's tight, go ahead and yarn over and slip it. Okay, this is probably the only slip stitch that you want to make sure you do a little bit tight. Okay, and that's all there is to it. Now you can just go ahead and start working your way across just like before. So making sure I've got my stitches matching each other, I'm just going to continue slip stitching all the way across my project. Okay, I've made it to the end, and now I'm going to go ahead and bind off. So what I'm going to do is just cut my yarn, give myself a little bit of slack so I can weave that in later, and then I'm just going to pull that tail through the loop that was on my hook. And now before we move on to the next step, I want to show you just exactly what we've done by slip stitching these together. Now if you've seen my granny square tote tutorial, you will have seen that the squares fit together pretty much perfectly, and there's no seam or there's no ridge. And now basically, when you slip stitch something together, you're going to create a little bit of a bump. And you can see that here pretty well. And I think it gives this design a little bit of interesting character. So that's why I've chosen this method. Now what we want to do is we need to sew down this open side. Okay, so just go ahead and fold your squares in half again, so you've got the wrong side facing each other. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. Okay, go ahead and get some more of your yarn. Make yourself a slip knot. Okay, and find the chain 2 in each one of these corners. And I want you to insert your hook into that space. And then put the yarn on your hook, pull it through, and chain 1. And then continue to slip stitch across just like we did on the other side. Okay, like I said before, make sure you're slip stitching into the same stitches on each side to make sure that your pillow is uniform. And basically what I want you to do is go ahead and slip stitch across this first granny square. And then when we come to the middle where we have sewn together before, we'll come back and I'll show you how to tackle that little hurdle right there that we have to get through. Okay, I've made it back to the end here where we have our seam. And I've put 3 slip stitches into this last 3 group here. And I want to go ahead and make sure I slip stitch once into the chain space that's on this side of the pillow. And now I simply just want to jump across and I want to find the chain 2 space on the other square. Okay, you can see it right there. And just insert your hook directly into that. And then once again, I want you to do this slip stitch a little bit tighter than the other ones. And that's going to hold it together. And keep some tension on your working yarn as you go into the next slip stitch as well. That way it doesn't slide out and you've got a pretty sturdy tension on it. So with that, most of the difficult part is done, if you could even consider this difficult. And all we need to do is just finish slip stitching across this granny square, and then we'll actually start fitting it on the pillow. Now with this design, this is more of a decorator pillow, so we're not actually going to be able to take this cover off once it's on. We're actually going to sew it right onto the pillow. Okay, so go ahead and finish slip stitching across this granny square, and we'll come back and we'll start stitching it onto the pillow. Okay, as you can see, I've finished slip stitching across the other side. I bind it off the exact same way that I did before, and now I'm ready to start actually sewing this onto the pillow. And right now I've got the right side facing up, but what we want to do is flip that over. Okay, so I've got the wrong side facing up, and all I'm going to do now is take my pillow form, and as I said, this is a 12-inch pillow, and since I'm going to be doing this kind of like retro style, I'm just going to turn this so that it's, you know, basically a diamond shape, and I'm going to put the pillow right in the center. Okay, and you're probably going to have to stretch a little bit. You know, the idea is we wanted it to be a little bit tight. And now what we need to do is basically just pull all the ends together, and if you find it's easier for you to pin this, then definitely do so. I feel like it's probably not going to be too much trouble to hold on to this and slip stitch it together at the same time. So you just want to get 2 of the corners folded together and just kind of hold on to them, and we're going to start at the corner just like we did before. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. I'm going to get some of my yarn and bind on just like we did before. Okay, what we want to do is create our slip knot, and now I want to find, now in this case, since we're working in a corner, we just have 1 chain gap space to go through. We don't have 2 like we did before. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm working through here. Since we don't have that corner, well, 2 corners to put together, I am simply going to, when you fold it together, you kind of get two spaces. Okay, so I folded them together. I'm inserting my hook right inside, and I am putting my yarn on my hook from the back. Okay, and we're just going to pull that yarn through the gap space just like before and chain 1 to fasten it on. And now we're going to work in every single one of the stitches just like before. Okay, just slip stitching our way all the way across. And like I said, you may find it easier to pin these together, because this does want to try and fall off here, and my pillow is a little bit thick compared to, you know, some pillow forms that I've bought in the past. So go ahead and slip stitch all the way up to the corner, and we'll meet back up and I'll show you how to transition into the next space. Okay, I finished crocheting down this portion of the pillow, and now I need to continue on crocheting down the other side. And like before, we just want to pull up our little pieces here and get them situated so that they're as close as possible to each other. And just like the way we joined on before, when we came across to, you know, a section where we've got two here, we want to do the same thing. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And I've got in my finger here the chain 2 space of both of these granny squares. And I want to insert my hook, well, I'm going to pull my working yarn up back behind me first. Okay, and then I'm going to insert my hook into both of those two gap spaces, and I'm going to slip stitch in there. And just like before, we want to make this one kind of tight, and especially right here, the pillow is working against us, so we want to make sure it's good and tight so that it closes. Otherwise, we'll have a little bit of a hole there. Okay, and so then once you get that slip stitch out of the way, make sure it stays tight up until you do your next slip stitch, and then you should be good to relax a little bit. And so just like before, just continue slip stitching across in every single stitch, and we're almost done. I'm pretty excited about how my pillow is turning out, so I can't wait to see it when it's done. Okay, I've made it all the way down to the end. I've got one more stitch left to do here. And just like before, I want to go into the corner space. Okay, that's going to be your last slip stitch down the side. Okay, and from here, again, we just need to bind off, so I'm just going to cut a little bit of yarn and pull the tail through the loop that was on my hook to secure it off. And now, all we have to do is simply slip stitch down the other side of the pillow. And we're going to do this the exact same way as we did before. Okay, so we're just going to get this ready. It's going to be a lot easier now at this point because the majority of the pillow is already covered, so we're not actually working against the pillow. So what we need to do, just like before, create a slip knot and find the gap space here. Okay, when you put the two together, find that space, insert your hook, put the yarn on your hook, pull it through, and do a chain to secure it. And then just start slip stitching. And this is our last side, and after this we'll finally be done. I'm really loving this crochet along. I'm glad that you all voted for, you know, this one as much as you did, because this was really my favorite of the two projects, because I think pillows are fun. I like to put a modern twist on crochet, and I like to incorporate these things in the decor in my house. So I'm especially excited to have my new crocheted items in my studio here. So this is kind of the last piece of the puzzle for me as far as decor goes. So why don't you go ahead and finish slip stitching across. When you get to the middle, like we did before, just treat it exactly the same. Your stitch is going to be, you know, the last one on this side of the pillow is going to be in the gap space, and then when you jump across to the other side, you just want to make sure you slip into the chain gap space on the other side as well. And just like before, you want to kind of make sure that stitch is a little bit tighter than the other so you don't have a little hole. And then you'll just continue slip stitching across to the other side until we're done. And I'll come back and show off my pillow, and we'll weave in our ends, and we'll call this one done. Okay, I finally made it to the last corner of the project, so I'm just going to bind off. And now I'm going to start weaving in my ends. And now you'll notice that every single corner you're going to have 2 strands. And this is what I do. I go ahead and give them a couple of knots just to secure it a little bit extra. And you don't want to, put too many, because if you start doing 3 or 4 knots, you can kind of see the little bump on the end. Okay, and I've got some darning needles here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to weave them right into the slip stitch. So that's a pretty dense portion of the pillow. And so I'm just going to insert my needle and just kind of go under a few stitches and pull through, and go under a couple more. I want to make sure this doesn't come out, but since we tied it off, if it does come out, it's not gonna make your pillow unravel. And then I'm going to go back the other direction. I think doing this really helps to keep your ends from working their way back out. If you go back and forth, I try to do it at least 3 times. So that was my second pass. So I'm going to just go back, in and kind of go through a few more. Okay, and then I'm just going to cut off the tail from there. And then that's all you need to do for, all 4 of your remaining corners. Okay. Just insert your needle into a few stitches and go back the other direction. And trim it off. Okay, so do that for all 4 corners. And then I'll come back and I will show you my finished pillow. I hope you've enjoyed this crochet along, and I'm really excited to show this to you all as a part of a surprise March crochet along. To get the written pattern and more information on this project, you can find the link in the description below. It's on my website. It'll be for the March crochet along, and it's called the Retro Granny Square Pillow. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and you can also do so on my blog. So I have a forum section that has a pattern support, and there will be a thread for this pillow. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to direct them there. I monitor that daily. If you'd like to post pictures of your project, I would love to see them, especially if you've used different color combinations or if you've chosen to go with a solid design. That would be really neat. I haven't seen one of those. So feel free to leave your pictures and your comments on my Facebook page. You can find me at facebook.com/BHookedCrochet. And until next time, I'm your host, Brittany, on behalf of B.Hooked Crochet. This has been another free crochet along. We'll see you next time.